How do you actually make a character? I've never made a video like this before, but with the release of the new Player's Handbook just around the corner, now's the perfect time to make a video like this. Wizards of the Coast gave me an early copy of the new Player's Handbook, and we're going to talk about that today. We're going to go through all the elements characters are composed of, and in what order I think is the best to finalize your sheets. Welcome to Pack Tactics, where we create characters. There are many ways to start making a character. Some people know what they want to play, like a specific class. Maybe it's because of mechanics they want to try out. Maybe it's because of a concept like Conan. Maybe you found some random art on the internet and thought, oh, I want to base my character around that. This Dragonborn looks like a fighter, so I'm gonna make a fighter. Other people want to make the strongest character ever and take over the world.
Oh, power gamers.
Jokes aside, I think most people want to fulfill some concept they have, except if they roll dice to decide what they're making. In this video, I'll be talking about how someone can make a character using the 2024 Player's Handbook. And in the end, I'll specifically talk about how to use elements from older books with this book. Let's start. An important distinction between the 2014 Player's Handbook and the 2024 Player's Handbook is that multiclassing and feats are now allowed by default. They're no longer optional. Multiclassing is a possible way to better fulfill your concept, whatever that might be. However, it's really important to keep this in mind while creating your character. This is because multiclassing has prerequisites. Specifically, each class has 1 or 2 primary ability scores. These aren't necessarily vital to your character, but they need to be at least a score of 13 to be able to multiclass in or out of the class. For example, a level 1 druid that wants to multiclass with warlock needs 13 wisdom and 13 charisma. This is important to keep in mind when making your character, because you assign your ability scores right at level 1. You might want to multiclass later on, but getting a score of 13 might be rough depending on choices you made long ago. So have a hard think whether you might be interested in multiclassing down the line. Once you have your concept or idea in mind, I think it's best to start with what class you want to accomplish this with. There's Barbarian for the melee brutes, Bard for the charismatic spellcaster jack of all trades, Cleric for a holy person with spellcasting, Druid for a spellcasting in tune with nature, Fighter is the classic martial with good options for both melee and ranged combat, Monk is for those who like to punch things and run really fast, Paladin is a classic holy knight with some spellcasting in it, Ranger is like a hunter, it's a mix between fighter and druid, it's a half-caster. Rogue focuses on one powerful attack a round and has skills. Sorcerer for a charismatic spellcaster that got their powers from within. Like, for example, they're born with magic in their blood. Warlock is also a charismatic spellcaster, but they get their powers from an outside entity. Like, for example, signing a pact with the devil. And finally, Wizards, the intellectual spellcaster that actually studied. You have a lot of options to achieve your desired concept, and that's very fun. If you want to make your character as powerful as you can, like Gator does, then I recommend you take a look at some of the spellcasters. Compared to the 2014 version, Martial's got some new goodies, but I think the overall power ranking have remained kinda similar, with Druid and Ranger feeling quite a bit worse for it. Your best bet for a melee Martial is something that at least has some Barbarian levels, whereas for a ranged Martial, Fighter is likely the best. If you've chosen your class, you get quite some features like proficiencies, armor training, and also some equipment. By the way, real quick, even though I have an early copy and I'm allowed to talk about it, I'm actually not allowed to show direct screenshots of it, just so you are aware. Anyways, it's important to find out what ability scores you need to make it all work. The primary ability score is some indicator to what is important, but not necessarily always necessary to make it work. All spellcasters have one primary ability score, and that is the score their spellcasting saving throw is based on. The number of spells you can prepare is not based on your spellcasting ability modifier at all. Now, there are some subclasses with features that give you more uses of a feature or allows you to do more damage the higher your stat is, but others don't include this or are just so minimal. So consider how high you want or need this stat to be. And no, it's not original to put an 8 at your primary stat. Gator thought of it first for his first 23 characters. But Kobold to subvert expectations. Well, Gator, so do fucking I. This video is sponsored by Fuck Dice. When you roll a natural 1, it says fuck. And when you roll a natural 20, it says fuck you. Or it says yeet. That's right, Gator. Yeet. Anyways, they're offering 8-piece dice sets with numerous stretch goals to unlock even more sets. Like, for example, the Sharp Edge dice sets that's really high quality. The more they raise, the more sets will become available, and you can customize the text on your dice. The guys doing the Kickstarter project is Only Crits. They're dice experts and have been sponsoring my videos for many years. I have their dice, and I can tell you this is top quality stuff. And now they want to take it to the next level. So what are you waiting for? Check out the Kickstarter. The first 150 backers who pledge at least the 1 to 8-piece dice set level will receive an extra free D20. Chop chop, you better hurry. Back to the video. The ability score you assign at level 1 are decided by 2 factors. The first factor is the following. There are 3 methods to create a set of numbers, which will be your starting off point. The rules do say that while they're all optional, the DM might prefer you to use a particular one. There's standard array, where you get 6 scores already and you just assign them. Random generation, roll 4d6s and record the total of the highest 3 dice. And point cost, you have 27 points to spread on your ability scores. This is exactly the same as the old version. The method I enjoy is point costs. Let's say I want to play a wizard with a level in cleric at some point. I usually use some handy calculator from the internet for this because, guys, math sucks. I don't know why people do it, but anyways, we're gonna use this for our array using point cost method. I made sure that both my wisdom and intelligence are 13 so I can multi-class in and out of the classes. The second factor is your background. You get equipment or some gold, proficiency in one tool. You also get 2 skill proficiencies. Then there's the origin feats. These are specific feats that are accessible through your background. The human species gets a bonus one. I'll talk about all the feats in a future video. And finally, each background includes a list of 3 ability scores that you may adjust in the set before. If you choose all 3, you can adjust them all by adding a +1. If you choose 2, you can add a +2 to one and a +1 to the other. Let's say I want a +2 to my intelligence and a +1 to my constitution like this. That means I need to find a background that includes both intelligence and constitution. This would be criminal, sage, or merchant. Criminal gets the alert feat, sleight of hand, and stealth as their skill proficiencies. They also get thieves tools as a tool proficiency. Sage gets the magic initiate wizard feat, arcana and history as skill proficiencies, and calligrapher's supplies as tool proficiency. Personally, I think there's too much overlap between things wizards get and this, so I'm not really interested in this. Merchant gets the lucky feat, animal handling and persuasion as skill proficiencies, and navigator's tools as tool proficiency. I think it's clear that I'll be going gator mode and do crime. Alert is really strong. Though to be honest here, I don't really like how restricted the backgrounds are. Your background needs to have 1. Ability scores that work with your build, 2. A feat that works with your build, and 3. Skill proficiencies that work with your build. There's also the tool proficiency, but I don't think it's that bad. It's just those 3 things that I mentioned that need to match. And that can be difficult not only to match your build, but also your concept, like your backstory. For now, there's only 16 backgrounds, so there's not a lot of possibilities for a perfect match. You might argue, well, it doesn't need to be a perfect match, but I would like to have that option. I'm creating my character. The good news is there are 2 possible avenues you can go down for more freedom, and that's nice. But unfortunately, they're locked behind DM fiat. First is you choose a background from an older book. You can adjust any ability scores. And if the background doesn't include a feat, you can choose any origin feats. The alternative is there will be an option optional rule to customize your backgrounds in the new DMG. I think this could have been handled better and is a regression from the freedom characters got for their backgrounds and ASIs before the 2024 Player's Handbook. Customizing your background was just a default option before. It's great. Anyways, after that, there's the option for your species, like elf, dwarf, and so on. All options get features at level 1, but some get even more features at level 3 or even 5. There are generally some features that are considered more powerful. Like there's one that lets you fly for 10 minutes. But I don't think your class hugely matters on what you pick. You should play whatever you want. But I'll go into more depth about these options in another video. It's also important to note that your character knows at least 3 languages. Common and 2 more languages of your choice from a list of standard ones. By the way, sign language is now on the list. That's super duper useful. At that point, you can finalize your character by picking an alignment, filling in the details, and then you're basically done. If you start at later levels, you can use the same rules for leveling up, but you also gain some starting money and equipment. The DM decides whether you get more stuff, or even a number of magic items like in this table here. You should keep in mind that you almost always get a new feat every 4 levels. And every feat in this book, besides the origin feats, give you a +1 bonus to 1 ability score. So that might affect what ability scores you want to start off with. But Kobold, enough about this! I want to know how to play a Hexblade Warlock with the new Player's Handbook! Just so you guys know, I interviewed Jeremy Crawford about this. We talked about how older content works with the new Player's Handbook. I'm basically an expert now because of that rules lawyer. He taught me how to play the game. To summarize, when using the new 2024 Player's Handbook, options that also appear in the older content are replaced by the versions in the new Player's Handbook. If there's a subclass, feat, or something else in older content, but does not appear in the new Player's Handbook, you can still use it. Necromancer from the 2014 Player's Handbook is a good example. You can still use that. As for Hexblade, you can still play Hexblade. Same with spells. Absorb Elements, Gift of Alacrity, go ahead. As for Conjure Animals, for example, that would be replaced if you want to use anything from the new Player's Handbook. It's pretty straightforward with the spells. Feats require a tiny bit more thought. Feats in the new Player's Handbook have categories. The ones that appear are Origin, General, Fighting Style, and Epic Boon. Some features that give you a feat have a prerequisite for the type of feat you can choose. The new Human species, for example, says you gain an Origin feat of your choice. As for older feats, they have no category. You can only pick them when there is no such prerequisite. For example, at a level where you get an ASI feature, that's when you can pick any feat. And of course, you need to qualify for it. If you pick Custom Lineage from Tashes, there is no category prerequisite. So you could, for example, pick Eldritch Adept from Tashes, which was not reprinted in the new book. You can also pick any origin feat through this. But you can't pick a general feat with a level gap that is above 1. The reason for that is because you are level 1 at character creation. But fighting style feats, for example, only require you to have the fighting style feature. So that would be allowed if you had that feature. You can get that through Fighter, for example. Speaking of species, let's talk about backgrounds and species. As I mentioned before, you can use older backgrounds. You can also use old species like Half-Elf, for example. Here's what the book says. Backgrounds in older D&D books don't include ability score adjustments. If you're using a background from an older book, adjust your ability scores by increasing one score by 2, and a different one by 1, or increase 3 scores by 1. None of these increases can raise a score above 20. Similarly, species in older books include ability score increases. If you're using a species from an older book, ignore those increases and use only the ones given by your background. Also, if the background you choose doesn't provide a feat, you gain an origin feat of your choice. I think species speaks for itself, but backgrounds might require a bit more detail. The way I interpret this is you still get the origin feat, skill proficiencies, tool proficiencies, and equipment which are listed in the old backgrounds, but nothing else. This is because the new Player's Handbook specifically lists that a background includes these parts. Technically, it's not exclusive, but I think it would be weird if you got additional features that used to be included in backgrounds if you used older content, but not the newer content. If that were the case, you'd never want to pick a new background. Regardless, as I mentioned, you only get an origin fee if your background doesn't include one already. Finally, for subclasses, all classes get their subclass at level 3. As part of your first subclass feature, they all have a sentence that says something like, for the rest of your career, you gain each of your subclasses features that are of your class level or lower. This basically means that anything you would have normally gotten before level 3 from older subclasses, you now get at level 3. Any subclass feature afterwards, you gain at the originally listed level. One example where this doesn't hold exactly is the 2014 Cleric's 8th level subclass features. These were always either Divine Strike or Potent Spellcasting. They basically got absorbed by the base class through Blessed Strikes, which states that you only get access to the latter. It says if you get either option from a Cleric subclass in an older book, use only the option you choose from this feature. I think that's basically it for making your character. You get the gist now. Next video will probably be a build, because I want to talk about spells. So stay tuned. End of video. Fuck! Oh yeah, don't forget to check out the fuck dice. Maybe you can get a free D20, who knows? And by the way, people who sign up to my Patreon get early videos. So you might want to sign up for that. Anyways, bye bye!